The Gozney Arc versus the Gozney Arc XL. We're going over how long they take to heat up, how much propane they use, which one's right for you, and much more. First off, I gotta say, Gozney did not send me either of these ovens. Picked them up at my local hardware store. So this is my full honest observations and opinions. When I tested the heat up time on both of them, I started them at the exact same time, had them in my garage with the back door open and the garage door open like a foot to get some airflow so I don't get carbon monoxide poisoning. But I wanted to do it in a more controlled environment. I gave some numbers on the XL in other videos. Today's numbers are gonna be different because we're not outside where there's wind. It's a more controlled environment. Also, at the end of the test, they were both turned off at the exact same time. So let's take a look at this chart here. You can see that the Arc and the Arc XL were neck and neck for like the first 10 minutes, and then the XL just pulled ahead the rest of the time. The XL got to 850, which is the benchmark I usually go for. That's when I usually launch my pizzas. Took 33 minutes. Before it was 41 on previous videos. Again, that was outside, different conditions. Now we're in a more controlled environment. So 33 minutes. And I actually did this test twice. So an hour and a half, temping it over and over, did the test twice just to make sure both times it came in at 33 minutes. The Arc came in at 39 minutes, which surprised me when I first saw that because I was fully expecting the Arc to get up to temp quicker because it's a smaller area to heat up, but surprisingly it actually takes longer. To get to 950, I measure that because that's a temperature they always tout. These companies say they can get up to 950 in so much time. So the XL got there in 49 minutes, and the Arc got there in an hour and 2 minutes. And again, this is from an infrared thermometer. Okay, we'll get to the internal thermometer next. And usually I'll test like what the max temp is, but where these both shot past 1,000 degrees, I didn't care to push it much past that. Usually I'm testing the max temp on ones that can't really get up to 1,000. So the XL got there in an hour and 5, and the Arc got there in an hour and 22. So now onto the other graph. This is for the internal temperature that's coming out on the digital display. I tracked that, and based on that, which the thermometer there is underneath the stone, so it does take longer. The Arc XL hit 850 after 44 minutes, and the Arc hit it after 47 minutes. Now, I just want to preface, I've seen some weirdness with the displays, so take this data for what it's worth. I'll go into detail with that a little bit more later. But the XL hit 950 at an hour, and the Arc hit it at an hour and 2 minutes. And then 1,000, which is the max, it maxed out on the XL at an hour and 13, and on the Arc at an hour and 20. And one of the things I've had several people ask about is, how long do these need to cool down before you can move them? And I can't address that fully, but here are the things I can tell you. After these ran for an hour and a half, I temped the top on both. They were both at 290. Then the sides, which is hard because it can't read the silver, so it's just this lip here on the side it's reading. It was like 180 to 200, but you could easily grab the plastic underneath that grip. I could hold that indefinitely. It would not burn me. Where you're gonna get burned is picking it up with your arms on the side. So it is hard for me to say how long until you can transport them because, you know, if you have sweatshirt on, gloves, other things, your heat tolerance, there's a lot of variables there. So I want to try and come up with a test. So check out somedadscook.com. I'm going to be putting all the pizza oven reviews on there. So any new tests I come up with, I'll go ahead and update the information on that site since it's kind of hard to update YouTube videos. Another thing, the front. I measured right here on the front on both, and it was over 400 degrees. So if you are going to transport it with the opening here away from you. You're less likely to get burned. Okay, so now let's get into propane usage. What I did, I'm not saying this is 100% accurate, but what I did is I put the propane tanks for each of these on a scale. The Arc XL weighed in at 17.6 kilo, and the Arc came in at 16.9 kilo. We ran both of them for an hour and a half, full throttle, exact same conditions. After that test, The Arc XL came in at 17.1, so half a kilo. And the Arc came in at 16.5, so 0.4 kilo. So you do save 20% of gas in the Arc XL. I'm not saying that's astronomical, it is what it is. Now let's move on to our heat distribution test, which is we fire up the ovens to 850. We let the stone sit in that heat for at least a half hour and make sure they are 850 when we launch. We cook them for a minute and a half on full throttle, and we just let it sit for the whole time, no turning, because we want to see, for me, mostly two things. How hot is that burner up top? And the second one is just to see where the heat is going. I like to know where the hot spots are, so if there's a spot in the crust I want to give a little more char, I know exactly where to put it. You can see in this first picture, this is the Arc with a 14-inch pizza, and on the left it's burnt. No surprise there because it's right by the burner. But there is some good browning along the back. And then on the opposite side, you can see where the flame kind of comes down and kisses the crust a little bit, which we've seen on the XL. And then let's check out the bottom. Well, actually, real quick, you can see from like 3 to 6 o'clock, it didn't get anything. So not a lot of heat on the front right of the oven. And then on the bottom, same as the top, on the left, you can see it's burned. And then along the bottom, which is the back of the oven, it's cooked better than in the front of the oven. And now let's look at the Arc XL. We did a 16-inch pizza, roughly. You can see it's not the best circle, but it got a ton of burning over on that left side. And then on the opposite side, it burned as well from the flame coming down and touching the crust. Some good browning in the back, and then again, 3 to 6 o'clock, virtually, nothing there. On the bottom, same thing, off to the left, that's right by the flame, and then the bottom's the back of the pizza oven. So the heat distribution in these things are almost identical. I thought that the flame on the Arc would have come down and burnt the crust even more than it did on the XL, but they look on par, or the Arc is just slightly less, so that kind of surprised me. I wish that they would have just put the same burner, exact scenario here from the XL in the Arc, and I feel like it would have done more of the stuff I thought it would. Our next test is what I call the recovery test. That's testing how much heat that stone can hold and how fast it can get back up to temp. So what we do is, same scenario, get it up to 850, let the stone sit for at least a half hour at 850, and launch a pizza, cook it for a minute and a half on full throttle. Then we take that pizza out and we keep track of how long it takes for the stone to get back up to 850. And then we launch another pizza, cook it on high for a minute and a half, we pull it out, so that we can see what the undercarriage looks like. In the picture here, I'm showing you the second pizza cooked after it got back up to temp, and it looks great. It really does look great. So recovery times for these ovens. Arc XL came in at 3 minutes, and the Arc came in at 4. There are things you can do to decrease that time, like using a Baffle door. This is one from New to You. And this door is actually made for the Arc XL. It's a prototype they've been working on. I've been helping them with testing it and other stuff. The heat up time and recovery time is cut down drastically. I don't want to give too many of the details yet because we are still working on making some changes to the door. That'll be out April 1st. There'll also be one for the Junior over here. But the door will help decrease heat up time and it will decrease recovery time. I've used one on my dome a ton, and it has saved me a lot of time. Worth its weight in gold in the amount of time you'll save if you cook a lot of pizzas like I do. When I have groups here of, we're cooking 15, 25 pizzas, it helps to get that stone back up, because before that, the bottoms would just be not cooked very well. So huge time saver. Okay, let's take a quick look at the comparison on the stones. I do first want to point out, these stones are pretty thick. I like it. Let's look at the Arc XL first. It is about 20 1/4 deep by 16 5/8 wide. The Arc is a little over 18 1/8 by 14 5/8. And to put in comparison, let's take our 12-inch pizza and show it on the Arc. So plenty of room here to cook a 12-inch pizza. And one of the things I do like about this compared to the Rockbox, which I do have a video coming out very soon comparing the Arc to the Rockbox. But one of the things I want to point out is the amount of room you have forward and backward. So when you're going to launch, you know, let's say you're launching your pizza here, you have a lot more room for messing up, which is something I need. So if you accidentally don't launch it deep enough, you launch it too deep, there's still room that once the crust is set up enough, you can move it around. And then side to side, you still have a good amount of room there. And then let's go to the XL, plenty of room. You can launch it too deep, too shallow, off to one side, off to another. Really great for beginners, but plenty of room for 12-inch. Now, 16-inch obviously is not going to fit in the Arc. But if they had made it a little bit wider, it would almost be like on par with a 16-inch Rockbox, where you don't have as much room front to back. The Arc XL, here's one of the things I do like. I mean, you're really tight on the sides, but again, on your launch, you've got more room that if you accidentally launch too far, too shallow, there's a bit of room there. So I do appreciate that. And obviously the thicknesses here, they feel the exact same. Thing I have noticed is on the Arc XL, this front section here tends to be significantly colder than the middle and everywhere else in here. You can even see, I mean, I let this burn to clean it off, and this whole front section here never got hot enough to really burn it off, but here it did. Because it is further from that burner, where on the Arc, you're not as far from that burner. So let's take a look in these without the stone. You can see the burner over here. This little thing over here, I'm pretty sure is the temperature gauge. You can actually push down on it and it pops back up. So I'm sure once the stone hits there, that's where it's getting its temperature read from. And the Arc has the same situation. The Arc's temperature gauge is about 1/4 inch closer to the burner than the XL. Don't know if that makes a huge difference or not, but it is great to see this thick piece underneath. I mean, that's is about 2 inches thick. I think that's what helps these things retain their heat so well. Okay, so another thing I wanted to address is the dimensions of the pizza ovens. You can find most of this online, the widths and depth. It's like a 2-inch difference, but I figure what most people would like to know is the distance between the foot pegs. They're both the same at 11 inches wide and 15.5 long. Now let's discuss portability. This is something I feel like they did a great job designing with the handles on the side, and then you can just lean it against yourself and then put it where you need it. Same thing with the XL, it's just a little heavier. So let's go over the weights. The Arc comes in at 47.5 pounds. You can see the kilos there as well. The XL comes in at 58.5 pounds. Kilos also there. I mean, it's a difference of 11 pounds. So for some that could be a big difference, for others it's not. It's really up to the person who's buying the pizza oven. So let's go over the pros and cons. Since they are so close, I'm gonna go over the pros of both of them first. The things that I feel like both of these shine on. They have great heat up times. 33 minutes, 39 minutes. That's a great heat up time. You can improve it with a door, but for straight out of the box, that's a great heat up time. They are portable for the most part. I mean, you could get a friend on one side on the handle and a friend on the other, and then they're super portable. Nice thing is you can remove the stones, and then you can swap it out for like a thicker biscotto stone, whatever they're called, or if it cracks, you could probably have a new one shipped without having to send a whole oven. So that is a nice feature they've done, because on the Rockbox and Dome, I don't think that's the case. So, well, at least not like as easily as just prying it up and pulling it out. So I do like the probe under the stone, just like on the Rockbox, because it's nice to see that the stone is heated up all the way through. I also like that the flame is off to the side. I love that about the Dome as well. Like with the Rockbox or some of the Unis, the flame's in the back, so you can't always see the crust. So with the flame on the side, it's a lot easier to make sure you're not burning, and I really like that feature. And the heat retention on these things is great. I mean, 3 minutes and 4 minutes. To put in comparison, the Unikeru was 7 minutes. So they really do a good job of retaining that heat and getting back up to temp. So now the cons for both of these. And I feel like this is a con with most pizza ovens, but the hoses just aren't long enough, and I could go buy a replacement, but it'd be nice if they made them just a little longer for putting up on taller tables, because I hate having to hunch over when I'm cooking a pizza. So a little bit longer of a hose would be nice. One of the cons on the Arc and Arc XL is this black soot that forms. And I've only had this thing for a couple of days and only done a couple cooks, and it's already got a lot of black soot. The XL, I've already cleaned, that's why it's not there. But I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to clean it. You can just take a wet rag and wipe it, and that generally gets rid of most of it. So if you're in a hurry and you just want to get rid of some of it, a wet rag gets rid of most of it. But let's get a closer look. After wiping it, there's still some residual stuff left over. And so Gozney actually recommends Barkeeper's Friend. That's what I have right here. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that with some Barkeeper's Friend, just putting some on my rag. And you will see that it will pull that off very easily. Now it looks as good as new. Another thing I've noticed is these knobs, they wiggle quite a bit and just feel, I don't know, for being Gozney, they feel a little wobbly. I don't know, it just doesn't feel up to their normal quality, especially on the dome, but the dome is significantly more money. But even the rock box feels a little more solid than these knobs. And again, there's no natural gas option. I really wish Gozney would figure out natural gas. The temp gauge. I have seen some weirdness with the temp gauge where I'll let it heat up, it gets up to like 950, and then I drop the temp and the stone's reading like 820, and the thermometer is still saying that it's 950, and it stays like that a while. I don't know if that's just because it's so good at retaining the heat, but it throws me off sometimes. And I have seen, on one of the tests I did, the stone temp on the Arc was like 50 degrees lower than it seemed like it should be in comparison with the XL. And the displays turned off like they do after a half hour, and I turned it back on, and then boom, it was up 50 degrees. So that was kind of weird. I need to test those a little bit more, but they do seem a little funky. Now let's go into the individual pros and cons. And in this situation, when there's a pro for the Arc, it's probably a con for the XL, but let's get into it. A pro for the Arc is that it uses less gas than the XL. A pro for the Arc is that it is easier to transport than the XL. And then the cons for the Arc is that it takes longer to heat up than the XL. Surprised me. And the Arc's only $100 less than the XL. I would expect it to have been, at least like $200 cheaper, but the fact that they're only $100 apart doesn't really bode well for the Arc. And then the Arc, it is 14 inches, but compared to a 16-inch, you're getting less room to learn. When I first learned to cook, I loved my Unico to 16 because I had room to work around, and when I got the rock box, it forced me to really get my turning down with a turning peel. And then you don't ever have the option of a 16-inch pizza. If that's something you ever wanted to grow into, you're limited to the 14 inches. So which of these ovens is right for you? I think in most cases, the XL is the way to go. There are some outliers that I'll discuss where the Arc will probably be better for you. So who is the Arc for? The Arc is more for people who really care about the portability of it. Maybe you take it to the park, camping, to a friend's house, you use it for catering, you're constantly moving it, and that 11-pound difference does start to add up or is just a little bit past your threshold, then that's when the Arc is going to shine for you. I don't think it's for people who are trying to save a buck. Honestly, it's worth the $100 to get the XL. Even if you're telling yourself right now, I only cook 12-inch pizzas, I don't need a bigger one, There may be a day when you want to cook something bigger in it, and for $100, it heats up quicker and cooks bigger pizzas. We do have a Arc versus Rockbox video coming out soon, and then an Arc XL versus Coda 16 coming out after that. So make sure you are subscribed and hit the bell notification if those are videos you are interested in. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by.